Before we begin, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders relax. Now tell me honestly, have you ever had a thought in English that felt so clear in your mind, but when you tried to speak it out loud, your mouth refused to help? You are not alone in this. Millions of learners face the same moment of silence. Your heart wants to speak, but your voice freezes. You know the words. You understand the meaning. But when it's time to speak, the sounds come out unclear. Let me tell you something surprising. Speaking clearly isn't just about grammar or vocabulary. It's not even about a perfect accent. It's about confidence, rhythm, and connection. It starts long before your tongue moves. It begins inside your mind. Most learners make the same mistake. They think, if I learn more words, I'll speak better. So they fill notebooks with lists, flashcards, and apps. But when they finally try to speak, their voice is still shaky. Why? Because their head is full of noise. That noise is fear. Fear of mistakes. Fear of being judged. Fear of repeating yourself. This noise makes your words heavy. It traps your voice inside. The result is not clear English. The result is a nervous whisper that no one can fully hear. Our story today is about Sara, a 23-year-old girl with a big dream. She wants to become a flight attendant. She has the smile, the energy, and the heart. But she has one problem. Every time she speaks English, people ask her to repeat. Sara worked hard. She studied every night. She watched videos, copied accents, and memorized new vocabulary. She filled notebook after notebook. But when she opened her mouth, she froze. Her voice shook. Her sentences felt broken. She felt small. One evening, she went for a walk in the park. She was listening to a podcast when she heard one powerful line. You cannot speak clearly until you think clearly. The words hit her like a stone. She stopped walking. She whispered, think clearly? That night, she sat with her notebook. At the top of the page, she wrote, why can't I speak clearly? She waited, and slowly the answers came. I am scared. I hate repeating myself. My accent sounds strange. For the first time, she saw the truth. Her teacher once told her, if you rush, you crush. Back then, she laughed. But now she understood. She was always rushing. Rushing to finish the sentence. Rushing to sound smart. Rushing to be perfect. And the faster she rushed, the less clear she was. The next morning, she tried something new. She stood in front of the mirror and spoke 5 simple sentences. My name is Sara. I want to speak clearly. I am learning English. I am not afraid. I believe in myself. She said them slowly, without fear. At first, it felt silly, but her voice grew steadier. Her face relaxed. She felt the rhythm of her own words. For the first time, her English sounded like her. Clear, honest, and alive. And that day, Sara's real journey finally began. Sara woke up earlier than usual the next day. The first thing she did wasn't checking her phone or rushing to work, but sitting down with her notebook. She wanted to see the noise inside her head. She wanted to face it instead of hiding from it. She wrote slowly, I'm scared of mistakes. I'm scared people will laugh. I hate repeating myself. My accent is strange. Line after line, she poured her worries onto the page. And as she did, something powerful began to happen. The fears looked smaller on paper than in her mind. They were no longer shadows. They were just words. And words can be changed. For the first time, Sara felt like she had control. She wasn't her fear. She was the one watching her fear. She remembered how her teacher once said, clarity comes from simplicity. Sara decided to test this idea. That morning, instead of practicing complicated sentences, she chose simple ones. I like tea. The sun is bright. Today I feel happy. She stood in front of the mirror again. This time, she slowed down even more. She let each word breathe. She didn't push or rush. She treated every sentence like a small gift, and with each sentence, her voice grew a little clearer, a little stronger. At first, it felt strange, too slow, too careful, but then she noticed something. When she spoke slowly, her face relaxed, her shoulders dropped, her eyes opened wider. She looked calmer, more confident, more alive. Clear speaking was about calmness. That day, Sarah tried her experiment outside. At the grocery store, she smiled at the clerk and said, "Good morning." The words came out slowly but steady. The clerk smiled back and replied, "Good morning." For the first time, Sarah didn't feel embarrassed. It was just one sentence, but it felt like victory. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. She had spoken with presence. She had spoken with peace. And the world had understood her. That single moment gave her hope for more. On her walk home, she practiced again. She whispered to herself, "I am learning. I can speak clearly. I am not weak." The rhythm of the words matched the rhythm of her steps. She wasn't just learning English. She was training her mind. That night, she made a plan. Not a huge, complicated schedule, but one simple promise. Every day, I will speak slowly and clearly, even if it's just one sentence. She didn't need to impress anyone. She just needed to build her own voice. For the first time in years, she felt excited about English. Not pressured, not scared, excited. She understood now. Speaking clearly isn't about speed or perfection. It's about space. The space you give yourself and the space you give each word. Sarah smiled as she closed her notebook. The words on the last page were simple. "Tomorrow, I will speak clearly again." She turned off the light, and for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep with hope instead of fear. The next morning, Sarah sat in her small kitchen with a cup of tea. She whispered her usual sentences, but this time she noticed something. The words had a rhythm, like music. Each word had its own beat, and together they created a gentle flow. She realized speaking clearly wasn't just about pronunciation. It was about rhythm. When she spoke too fast, the words crashed into each other. But when she slowed down, the words stood apart. Each one had space to breathe, to shine, to be understood. She remembered how she loved music as a child. When she was little, she would sing songs loudly, without caring if her voice was perfect. Singing was fun because rhythm made her brave. She wondered, could English speaking be the same? That day, she decided to test it. Instead of repeating random sentences, she picked a short poem she had found in an old English book. The lines were simple. "The sun is bright. The sky is blue. My heart feels light. My words are true." She read it aloud slowly, almost like singing. The rhythm carried her voice. The words felt alive. For the first time, English didn't feel heavy. It felt like music. She smiled at the sound of her own voice, clear and warm, like a small song. Later, she tried the same thing with real-life sentences. "I need a bus ticket. Could you help me, please? I want a glass of water." She spoke them with rhythm, like lines in a melody. They sounded stronger, easier, and most importantly, clearer. That afternoon, she went to the bus stop. Her heart was racing, but she remembered the rhythm. When the driver asked her a question, she replied, "One ticket, please." The words came out like a steady drumbeat. The driver smiled and gave her the ticket. She felt her chest rise with pride. It wasn't just about being understood. It was about feeling free. The rhythm had given her courage. It was like dancing with words, not fighting with them. She wanted to practice this every single day. On her walk home, she began to hum softly. Then she added English words to the tune. "Today I speak clearly. Today I feel strong." The melody carried her confidence. She wasn't embarrassed. She was enjoying herself. She was finally having fun. That night, she wrote in her notebook again. Clear speech is rhythm. Rhythm gives confidence. Confidence gives clarity. She underlined the words 3 times. It felt like she had discovered a secret key to her English voice. Before bed, she looked at herself in the mirror and spoke again. This time, she wasn't only saying words. She was performing them, almost like a song. Her reflection smiled back at her. And for once, she didn't look like a student. She looked like a speaker. She whispered before sleeping, "Tomorrow I will find more rhythm." Her heart was calm. Her voice was steady. And for the first time, she felt that her dream of speaking clearly wasn't far away. It was already beginning to happen. Sarah's progress was small but steady. She felt proud. Yet she noticed another problem. Sometimes, even when she slowed down and used rhythm, her words still tangled. She realized she was afraid of silence. She hated leaving gaps between words. Whenever she spoke, she rushed to fill every space. Afraid that silence meant weakness, she stuffed her sentences with and nervous sounds. The result wasn't clarity. It was confusion. Her voice was like water spilling too fast from a glass. One evening, she tried a new exercise. She stood in front of the mirror and said, "My name is Sara." Then she paused. She let the silence hang in the air before adding, "I want to speak clearly." The pause felt strange, but powerful. She noticed something magical. The pause made her words sound stronger. Each sentence felt like a stone placed carefully on the ground. The silence wasn't empty. It gave weight to her words. She thought, maybe silence is not my enemy. Maybe it's my friend. The next day, she tested it in real life. At a cafe, she ordered tea. Normally, she would rush. "Can I have a tea, please?" But this time she paused. "Can I have a tea, please?" The pause gave her time to breathe. The waiter understood her immediately. For the first time, she felt control. The pause gave her space to think, space to choose her words, space to breathe. It was like discovering a hidden tool. She realized speaking clearly wasn't only about sound. It was also about silence. That night, she practiced with longer sentences. "I want to improve my English speaking. Today, I learned something new. I believe in myself." The pause felt like a drumbeat between phrases, making every word stand out with meaning. She realized this was how great speakers spoke. They didn't rush. They didn't fear silence. They used it like music. Like actors on a stage, they let their words rest, then rise again. And suddenly, their message became unforgettable. The next morning, she tried speaking slowly with pauses while brushing her teeth, making breakfast, even putting on her shoes. Everyday actions became practice sessions. She didn't need an audience. Her mirror, her kitchen, her bedroom became her classroom. By the end of the week, she noticed a change. People didn't ask her to repeat anymore. They listened. They nodded. They smiled. Her English wasn't perfect, but it was clear. The pause had given her words power. Before sleeping, she wrote in her notebook, "Clear speaking is not fast speaking. Clear speaking is calm speaking. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strength." She underlined the last sentence twice. It was the truth she needed to remember. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Tomorrow, I will practice the pause again." She smiled in the dark. For the first time, silence felt beautiful. And in that silence, her dream of clear English grew brighter than ever. Sarah's world was slowly changing. Each morning she spoke to her mirror. Each evening she wrote in her notebook. But she knew something important. A mirror was safe. A notebook was safe. The real test was people. And people still made her nervous. At the market, she froze when a stranger asked her a question. At work, she stayed quiet during English conversations. She worried her pauses were too long, her rhythm too strange, her words too simple. Her voice shrank back into her chest. That night, She sat on her bed feeling frustrated. Why can I speak clearly alone but not outside? She asked herself. Then she realized the answer: fear. At home, there was no judgment. But in the world, there were eyes, ears, and possible mistakes. She remembered a phrase from a podcast: confidence is built, not given. She whispered it aloud. She couldn't wait for courage to magically appear. She had to build it step by step, like a wall, one brick at a time. The next day, she made a small plan. She wouldn't aim for perfect English. She wouldn't aim for long conversations. Her only goal: one clear sentence to one real person each day. Just one. That would be her training ground. Her first chance came quickly. At the bakery, she looked at the woman behind the counter and said, "One loaf of bread, please." She paused after each word. The woman smiled and handed her the bread. Sara walked out with her heart racing, but proud. The next day, she tried again. At the bus stop, she asked, "What time is the next bus?" The man replied kindly. She understood every word. Her voice had been soft, but clear enough. That night, she celebrated with tea and a smile. Day by day, she grew braver. A short sentence at the library, a polite request at a cafe, a friendly greeting to a neighbor. Each one was like lifting a small weight. At first, it was heavy, but with practice, her muscles grew stronger. One afternoon, she surprised herself. A tourist asked for directions, and Sara explained in English without thinking. She spoke slowly, clearly, with rhythm and pauses. The tourist thanked her warmly. She walked away, almost laughing. She hadn't even been scared. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "Practice is courage. Fear is smaller now. My voice belongs to me." She underlined the word courage 3 times. She was finally learning that fear doesn't disappear. You just speak louder than it. Before sleeping, she whispered, "Tomorrow, I will speak again." Her heart felt lighter. Her voice felt steadier. Each word she spoke in the world was proof. Her dream was no longer far away. It was walking beside her every single day. Sara closed her eyes with a smile. For the first time in years, she didn't just dream of clear English. She lived it. One sentence at a time, one pause at a time, one brave step into the world. Sara's confidence was growing, but soon she faced a new problem. One afternoon, while talking to a shop assistant, she forgot a word. She froze, panicked, and rushed out of the store without finishing her sentence. The old fear returned quickly. That night, she sat on her bed feeling defeated. "Why do mistakes make me feel so small?" she whispered. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Mistakes equals shame." Then she stared at the page and realized this was the belief she needed to change. She remembered a video she once saw where a speaker said, "Mistakes are not enemies. Mistakes are mirrors." The words came back to her now. If mistakes were mirrors, maybe they showed her what to improve instead of proving she was weak. The next morning, she tried something new. She stood in front of her mirror and spoke sentences on purpose with small mistakes. "I go to market yesterday." Then she corrected herself. "I went to the market yesterday." She laughed. It felt less scary. She realized that when she corrected herself with patience, her voice grew calmer. She wasn't running from mistakes anymore. She was meeting them, looking at them, and learning from them. It was like turning a monster into a teacher. Later that day, she practiced outside. At the park, she asked a man, "Where is nearest bus station?" Then she paused, smiled, and corrected herself. "Sorry, where is the nearest bus station?" The man answered kindly, without judging. Sara felt proud. That evening, she wrote, "Mistakes show me the road." She underlined the sentence twice. She knew now that clear speaking wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about staying calm when they came, correcting gently, and moving forward with courage. Her new rule became simple. Speak, pause, correct. Every mistake became an exercise. Every correction became a victory. She didn't need to fear mistakes anymore. They had become part of her rhythm, part of her music, part of her clarity. After a week, something beautiful happened. She noticed people listen more patiently when she corrected herself calmly. They respected her effort. They saw her courage. Instead of feeling embarrassed, she felt stronger. Mistakes no longer stole her voice. At work, she tried it with colleagues. This sentence is not. Sorry, this sentence is unclear. Everyone understood. No one laughed. Sara smiled inside. For the first time, she realized mistakes weren't the end of clarity. They were the path to it. That night, she looked at her reflection and said firmly, I am not afraid of mistakes. Mistakes make me better. Mistakes make me strong. She repeated it until her voice felt powerful. She could see a new Sara looking back from the glass. She went to bed with a calm heart. The fear of mistakes had haunted her for years, but now it felt smaller. She wasn't running anymore. She was walking with it, learning from it. And in that friendship, her clear English was finally growing. Sara's growth was steady, but she knew one thing was still missing. Speaking to one person was progress, but her dream was bigger. A flight attendant didn't just speak to one person. She spoke to many. She needed to face an audience. The idea scared her. She imagined eyes staring, ears listening, mistakes waiting. But she also remembered her new rule. Courage is built, not given. She couldn't wait for the fear to disappear. She had to walk into it, step by step. Her first opportunity came at her English practice group. It was a small community class in her town. 10 people gathered every week to practice speaking. Usually, Sara stayed quiet, answering only when asked. But this time, she decided to volunteer. The teacher asked, would anyone like to introduce themselves for 2 minutes? Sara's heart pounded. Her hand rose slowly, almost against her will. Everyone turned to her. She stood, her knees shaking, her palms sweating, her breath uneven. She began softly. My name is Sara. I am 23 years old. She paused. Her rhythm returned. She continued, I want to improve my English because I want to be a flight attendant. She smiled. The words felt clear, even if her voice trembled. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then the teacher nodded warmly, and the group clapped. Sara's cheeks burned red, but her heart lifted. She had spoken for less than a minute, but it felt like crossing a mountain. That night, she wrote in her notebook, my first audience. I spoke. They listened. I was afraid, but I did it. She underlined the word did 3 times. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and real was stronger than perfect. The next week, she pushed herself further. When the teacher asked someone to describe their daily routine, Sara raised her hand again. This time, she spoke for almost 2 minutes, using rhythm, pauses, and even correcting a mistake calmly. The group listened attentively. Nobody laughed. Nobody judged. Instead, they nodded and encouraged her. Sara realized something powerful. Audiences weren't enemies. They were mirrors too. And the more she faced them, the clearer her voice would become. She practiced at home by recording herself. She stood in front of her phone, speaking slowly and clearly. Then she played it back, listening carefully. At first, she hated her own voice. But slowly, she began to hear strength in it too. Day by day, the recordings improved. Her words were clearer. Her pauses felt natural. Her rhythm was steady. She no longer avoided her own voice. She studied it, shaped it, and accepted it as hers. The mirror, the class, the phone, all were teachers. That night, she whispered before sleeping, I can speak to the world. It wasn't just a hope anymore. It was a promise. And deep inside, she knew This was only the beginning of her journey into the wider, waiting world. Sarah's confidence was slowly building. She was no longer afraid of short conversations or small audiences. But real life often surprises us when we least expect it. And one day, her biggest test came without warning. She was walking home from the library when she saw two tourists standing on the street corner. They looked confused, pointing at a map. Sarah felt her heart beat faster. She knew they needed help. She knew this was her chance. For a moment, she almost walked away. What if I make mistakes? What if they don't understand me? The old noise returned, whispering in her ear. But then she remembered her rule. Courage is built, not given. She stepped forward. "Hello," she said, her voice steady. "Can I help you?" The tourists smiled with relief. "Yes, please," one said. "We are looking for the train station." Sarah paused, breathed, and replied, "Go straight. Then turn left at the second street. The station is there." Her rhythm was clear. Her pauses were strong. Her voice didn't shake. The tourists repeated her directions, smiled, and said, "Thank you very much." Sarah waved goodbye, her chest rising with pride. She had spoken clearly, naturally, and with courage. As she walked away, her heart felt lighter than ever before. This wasn't practice in front of a mirror. This wasn't a friendly class. This was the real world. And she had succeeded. She whispered to herself, "I did it. I really did it." That evening, she replayed the moment in her mind. She didn't focus on the mistakes. She focused on the clarity, the connection, the courage. For the first time, she saw herself not as a learner, but as a speaker of English. The next day, she challenged herself again. At a cafe, she asked the waiter, "Could you please bring me water with lemon?" She said it slowly, with rhythm and pause. The waiter nodded immediately. Sarah smiled. Clear speech was working everywhere. She realized something important. Clear speaking was not about sounding perfect. It was about being understood. It was about confidence, rhythm, and pauses. And every time she succeeded, her fear shrank and her strength grew. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "I helped strangers. I spoke clearly. I was understood. I am no longer just practicing English. I am living it." She underlined the word living until the ink pressed deep into the paper. Lying in bed, she smiled in the dark. She felt a new energy inside her, a kind of power she had never felt before. It wasn't only English that was changing. She was changing too. Her voice was no longer small, it was alive. She whispered into the quiet room, "Tomorrow, I will face the world again." And this time, the whisper wasn't weak. It was clear. It was strong. It was the voice of someone who was finally becoming who she always dreamed of being. The small victories had filled Sarah with new courage. She was no longer terrified of everyday conversations. But inside her, a question grew louder. Could she speak clearly in front of strangers she didn't know at all? She wanted to find out. One weekend, her town held a community fair. There were stalls, music, food, and people everywhere. Sarah went with her friend Mia, who whispered, "Look, there's an English corner." It was a booth where visitors could practice English with volunteers. Sarah's stomach turned. A small crowd had gathered around the booth. Some were listening, some were speaking, some were laughing nervously at their mistakes. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She wanted to run, but she also wanted to try. Mia nudged her gently. "You can do this," she said. Sarah swallowed hard and stepped forward. The volunteer smiled warmly and asked, "Would you like to introduce yourself in English?" Sarah's hands trembled, but she nodded. She began softly, "Hello, my name is Sara. I live here in this town." She paused. The rhythm returned. "I am learning English because I want to be a flight attendant. I practice every day. I want to speak clearly." The crowd listened. Some nodded, some smiled. Sara felt the energy shift. She wasn't just talking to the volunteer. She was talking to everyone. For a moment, fear tried to rise, but she remembered her pauses. Silence carried her voice forward. She continued, "I believe mistakes are not bad. They help me learn. I am not afraid anymore. I am building my confidence step by step." The words weren't perfect, but they were clear, calm, and honest. When she finished, the small crowd clapped. Her cheeks burned red, but she laughed with relief. She had just spoken clearly to a group of strangers. Not in her mirror, not in her notebook, not in her class, but in real life. That night, she couldn't stop smiling. In her notebook, she wrote, "Today, I stood in front of strangers. I spoke clearly. They understood me. My fear became smaller. My courage became bigger." She underlined the word courage again and again. She realized that every time she faced her fear, she grew taller. Her voice grew steadier. Her English became clearer. She didn't need to be perfect. She only needed to be brave enough to keep speaking. As she lay in bed, she whispered to herself, "I spoke to strangers today. Tomorrow, I will speak again." The whisper carried no fear. It was calm, confident, and clear. The voice of someone ready for the next challenge. For the first time, Sara began to feel that English wasn't just a language she was learning. It was a door she was opening. And behind that door was not just her dream job, but a new version of herself, waiting to step into the light. The community fair had changed something deep inside Sara. For the first time, she believed she could speak to groups, not just individuals. But soon, life gave her a bigger reason to test her skills. Her dream job was calling. One evening, while scrolling through her emails, she saw it. A local airline was holding open interviews for new flight attendants. The message was short: strong English communication required. Her heart jumped. This was the chance she had been waiting for. At first, excitement filled her. But then came the fear. An interview meant real questions, real judgment, real competition. She imagined herself freezing, stuttering, losing her rhythm. The noise in her head began to grow again. She closed her eyes, placed her hand on her notebook, and whispered, "I am not the same person I was before. I can speak clearly now. I can pause. I can breathe. I can face this." Slowly, the noise faded, replaced by calm determination. The next morning, she began preparing. She wrote down common interview questions. Why do you want this job? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? She practiced answering each one with short, clear sentences. In the mirror, she repeated, "I want this job because I love helping people." Pause. "My strength is my communication." Pause. "I stay calm under pressure." She noticed how the pauses gave her voice weight, like stepping stones across a river. She also recorded herself every evening. At first, she hated hearing her own voice. But slowly, she began to notice progress. Her pronunciation was clearer, her rhythm smoother, her pauses natural. The mistakes were still there, but they no longer scared her. Mia helped too. She pretended to be the interviewer, asking questions while Sara answered. Sometimes Sara stumbled, sometimes she forgot words. But each time, she corrected herself calmly, smiled, and continued. Mia clapped after every answer. Sara realized something powerful. Interviews weren't just about English. They were about presence. Clear speech was not only about words. It was about showing confidence, even when nervous. It was about giving people the feeling they could trust you. She wrote in her notebook, "Clarity is not only sound. Clarity is confidence. Clarity is trust." The words felt bigger than English. They felt like life. She smiled, knowing she was preparing not just for a job, but for herself. The night before the interview, Sara stood in front of the mirror one last time. She looked at her reflection, straightened her shoulders, and spoke. "My name is Sara. I can speak clearly. I am ready." Her voice didn't tremble. It rang with strength. As she lay in bed, she whispered into the dark, "Tomorrow, I will not just speak. Tomorrow, I will show who I am." She closed her eyes, calm and steady, ready for the day that could change everything. The morning of the interview arrived. Sara woke up early, her stomach tight with nerves. She put on her neatest clothes, tied her hair back, and stood in front of the mirror. She whispered her mantra, "My name is Sara. I can speak clearly. I am ready." At the airline office, dozens of other candidates were waiting. Some looked confident, some nervous, some whispering last-minute practice. Sara felt her heart race, but she remembered her training, slow breathing, calm pauses, steady rhythm. When her name was called, she walked into the interview room. Two people sat across the table, smiling politely. "Good morning," one said. Sara paused, smiled back, and replied, "Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity." Her voice was clear. The first question came, "Tell us about yourself." Sara's hands trembled slightly, but she remembered her rhythm. "My name is Sara. I am 23 years old. I live in this town. My dream is to be a flight attendant because I love helping people." The next question, "What makes you suitable for this job?" She paused, breathed, and answered, "I am calm under pressure. I enjoy meeting new people. I have been practicing my English every day. I believe clear communication is my strength." For a moment, she worried she had spoken too slowly. But she noticed the interviewers nodding. They were listening carefully. They understood her. The pause wasn't weakness, it was power. It gave her words weight, made her presence stronger. Then came the hardest question, "What is your weakness?" Fear tried to rise again. But she remembered her rule, mistakes are mirrors. She smiled and said, "Sometimes I feel nervous when speaking English. But now, I practice every day. I pause, I breathe, and I am improving." The interviewers exchanged a quick smile. Sara realized they weren't expecting perfection. They were looking for honesty, clarity, and confidence. And that was exactly what she was giving them, one calm sentence at a time. At the end, they asked, "Do you have any questions for us?" Normally, Sara would have shaken her head. But this time, she paused and said, "Yes. What do you think is the most important quality for a flight attendant?" The interviewers looked pleased. One replied, "Good communication and a calm attitude." Sara smiled inside. That was exactly what she had been showing. Her training, her practice, her courage, it had all led to this moment. As she left the room, she felt light, almost floating. The outcome didn't matter anymore. She had spoken clearly, calmly, and confidently. For the first time, she felt she had shown her true self in English, without hiding, without fear. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "I faced the interview. I spoke clearly. I was not perfect, but I was real. And real is enough." She closed the book with a smile, knowing that no matter the result, she had already won. The interview was over, but now came the hardest part, waiting. For days, Sara checked her email every hour. Each time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. Was it the airline? Was it the answer that could change her life? But the inbox stayed empty. Doubt began to creep in again. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe my pauses were too long. Maybe they didn't like my accent. The old noise returned, whispering louder each day. One evening, Mia noticed Sara's silence and asked, "Why are you so worried? You did your best." Sara sighed. "But what if my best wasn't enough?" Mia smiled and said softly, "Your best was clear, strong, and real. That is always enough." Sara realized she was letting fear take over again. She remembered her notebook. She opened it and read her old lines. Mistakes make me strong. Silence is strength. Courage is built, not given. Each word reminded her of how far she had come. Instead of waiting in fear, she decided to use the time to grow. She practiced her English every day, recording herself, correcting mistakes, building new sentences. The waiting room of life became her training room of clarity. One morning, she tried something new. She went to the park and spoke out loud while walking, narrating her actions. I am walking. I see children playing. The sky is blue. I feel calm. At first, people looked at her strangely, but she laughed and kept going. Speaking to herself in public felt like freedom. It was practice without pressure. She realized clear speaking wasn't only for interviews or jobs, it was for her life. Every day was an opportunity to use her new voice. A week later, she joined her practice group again. This time, when asked to share a short story, she spoke about her interview. Her pauses were natural, her rhythm smooth, her confidence strong. Her classmates clapped, and the teacher said, "Sara, your voice is growing." Hearing that made her eyes shine. It wasn't about the job anymore. It was about transformation. Even if the airline didn't call, she had already changed. Her English was no longer a wall. It was becoming a bridge. That night, she wrote, "Waiting is hard, but waiting is also practice. I am not only waiting for results. I am preparing for my future." She underlined the word future 3 times. The waiting no longer felt empty. It felt alive. The very next morning, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a random message. It was the airline. With shaking hands, she opened the email. Her heart pounded as her eyes raced over the words. She gasped. A smile spread across her face. The message was short, but powerful. "Congratulations. You have been selected for the next stage." Her journey wasn't over. It was only beginning. And now, she was ready to face it. Sara could hardly believe it. She had passed the first stage. The airline invited her to join the official training program. It was the closest she had ever been to her dream. But she knew the next step would be harder than anything before. On the first day of training, she entered a large room filled with candidates. Everyone wore neat clothes, sat straight, and looked confident. Trainers walked around with clipboards, asking questions in English. Sara's heart pounded in her chest. When her turn came, a trainer asked, "Why is communication important for flight attendants?" Dozens of eyes turned toward her. The old fear tried to return, but she remembered her rhythm, her pauses, her calm. She smiled and answered slowly. Communication is important because passengers need to feel safe. Clear words create trust, and trust makes every flight calm. She paused after each phrase. The trainer nodded. The other candidates listened. Her voice was steady. That night, Sara wrote in her notebook, "Today I spoke clearly in front of many people. My fear is smaller. My voice is stronger." She felt proud, but she also knew the training had just begun. Every day would bring new tests. In the following weeks, they practiced real-life flight situations. Sara had to give safety instructions, answer passenger questions, and stay calm during emergencies, all in English. At first, she stumbled. Sometimes she forgot words. Sometimes she rushed. But she remembered her lessons. She paused. She corrected herself calmly. She breathed before every answer. Slowly, her mistakes stopped feeling heavy. They became part of the process, like stepping stones on the path to confidence. One exercise was especially hard. Each trainee had to stand in front of the group and give the full safety demonstration. Sara's hands trembled as she held the life jacket. But when she began, her rhythm carried her forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, please listen carefully. Pause. To fasten your seatbelt. Insert the metal tip into the buckle. Pause. Her voice was clear. Her pauses gave power. When she finished, the room clapped. The trainer smiled. Excellent clarity, Sara. She felt like flying herself. Every word had been a victory. Every pause had been a choice. For the first time, she believed she could not only dream of being a flight attendant, she could actually become one. That night, she whispered in bed, "Clear speaking is not about perfect English. It is about courage, rhythm, and calm." She had carried those lessons into the toughest room yet, and they had carried her forward. As she closed her eyes, she smiled. The sky no longer felt far away. Her dream was no longer a distant hope. It was waiting for her, just one clear voice away. Weeks of training passed quickly. Sara had grown stronger, braver, and clearer with every task. But now the final test had arrived. All the trainees would be judged on their communication skills in one last evaluation. Success meant flying. Failure meant going home. On the morning of the test, Sara woke up before sunrise. She looked into the mirror and whispered her mantra, "My name is Sara. I can speak clearly. I am ready." Her voice was calm, but her heart beat fast. Today was the day everything counted. At the training hall, the atmosphere was heavy with nerves. One by one, candidates were called into a large room where the examiners waited. When Sara's name was called, she walked forward slowly, breathing deeply, remembering every pause she had practiced. Her task was simple on paper but difficult in reality: to guide passengers through an emergency situation, all in English, while staying calm and clear. She stood tall, looked at the examiners, and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, pause. Please stay calm. Fasten your seatbelts. Pause. Follow the lights on the floor to the nearest exit. Pause." Each sentence landed firmly. Her rhythm carried her. Her pauses gave strength. Her voice filled the room. At one point, she stumbled on a word. Fear tried to rise, but she smiled and corrected herself. Excuse me, exit door." She didn't hide the mistake. She embraced it. The examiners exchanged approving nods. Mistakes weren't weakness. They were proof of control. The test continued with questions from the examiners. "What would you do if a passenger didn't understand?" Sara breathed, then answered, "I would speak slowly, repeat the instructions, and use clear gestures." Clarity is not only words. It is also presence. Her answer surprised even herself. It wasn't memorized. It came from her journey, from the lessons she had lived. The examiners smiled. Sara felt her chest rise with quiet pride. Her voice no longer trembled. It shone. When the test ended, she bowed slightly and said, "Thank you." Walking out of the room, she felt light, as if she had already passed. Whatever the result, she had given her truth. She had spoken with courage, rhythm, and calm. That evening, waiting for the results, she sat with her notebook. She didn't write about fear or doubt. Instead, she wrote, "Clear speaking is not about perfect words. It is about connection. Today, I connected. Today, I spoke as myself." Later, the announcement came. Sara's name was on the list of those who passed. She covered her mouth, eyes shining with tears. All the years of fear, silence, and doubt had led to this moment. Her clear voice had carried her into the sky. That night, she lay in bed whispering, "I am ready to fly." Her whisper was no longer small, no longer weak. It was steady, calm, and powerful, the voice of someone who had truly found herself through English. The first time Sara stepped onto an airplane in her new uniform, her heart pounded with pride. The seats stretched in neat rows, passengers settled in, and colleagues hurried around her. She took a deep breath. This was no longer a dream, it was her life. As the plane doors closed, She picked up the microphone for the safety announcement. Her palms sweated, but she remembered her rhythm, her pauses, her calm. She smiled, looked forward, and spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board." Her voice echoed through the cabin, steady and clear. Every head turned, every ear listened. She continued, "Please fasten your seatbelts and pay attention to the safety demonstration." Her words were calm, simple, and strong. No fear, no noise. When she finished, her colleagues smiled at her. One whispered, "Your announcement was perfect." Sara felt warmth spread through her chest. She had once been a girl too afraid to order bread in English. Now she was guiding a plane full of passengers. That night in her hotel room, she opened her old notebook. The pages were filled with fears, doubts, and mistakes, but also with victories, lessons, and courage. She traced the words with her finger, smiling at the journey written inside them. She whispered to herself, "Clear speaking is not about sounding perfect. It is about breathing, pausing, connecting. It is about speaking even when you are afraid." She had lived those words. They had carried her from silence to the sky. Sara realized something important. Her journey wasn't only about English. It was about life. Every pause she had learned in speaking also became a pause in living. A pause to breathe, to notice, to be present. Clarity was more than sound. It was peace. Her story is a reminder for all of us. If you struggle with speaking, don't hide. Don't wait until you feel ready. Speak now. Speak slowly. Speak with pauses. Speak with mistakes. Because your clear voice is already inside you. It just needs space. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need a fancy accent. You don't need thousands of words. You need courage, rhythm, calm, and honesty. These are the real tools of clear speaking, and they are waiting inside you already. Remember, mistakes are not enemies. Silence is not weakness. Speed is not clarity. True clarity is presence. True clarity is courage. True clarity is speaking your truth, even if your voice shakes. Especially if it shakes. So next time you open your mouth in English, take a breath. Give yourself space. Speak slowly. And let the world hear your true voice. Because your voice matters. Your words matter. And when you speak clearly, you give others the gift of understanding. Thank you for sharing Sara's journey. If her story inspired you, let it push you to use your own voice today. Speak clearly, speak bravely, and never stop practicing. And if you want more stories to guide your English, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.